Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have a total rock star guest. Super grateful that he made time for us and he's going to share his wisdom and experience so we can all learn from him. His name is Dr. Dave Kostopoulos, and he's an awesome human being and really cares for kids and has spent a lot of years within the school district. And now he's the director of curriculum and assessment. So total rock star. Dave, thank you for being with us, man.
Thanks for inviting me on, Mike. I just wanted to start off. I know some of the questions about how I got to be director of curriculum and assessment, and it's been quite a journey. I was a principal for 10 years. This is my first year as director of curriculum and assessment, and I kind of had my eyes on it for a while. Even when I was a principal, going for my doctorate, I didn't want to jump right to being a superintendent. Maybe that's something down the road in my future, but this was something I very much kind of had my eyes set on and was hoping to be able to become. I love curriculum. I love, you know, everything that it does at the core of education for our students. To me, that's the reason why we're here. It is for teaching our students how to read, write, be mathematicians, how to think um, critically. And the road to here started with me being a teacher, a fifth grade teacher.
Hmm.
And that was over 20 years ago. I'm 20 years in education. I've been fortunate to be in the same school district throughout that time. So I've really seen things at all levels as a teacher, as a principal. I even worked maintenance, I think the summer before I became a teacher. So, playground supervisor, I've done all of those things. And even tracking back to prior to being a teacher, I was a camp counselor
Hmm.
for seventh grade outdoor education trip that was taking place in the community that I lived. And that is what kind of really started it all to say, wow, I really like education. I like making a difference, and catapulted me into pursuing education in college. I graduated, student taught third grade, and then got hired as a fifth grade teacher in that same school district, which is where I still am in Lansing, Illinois. And I remember being a fifth grade teacher and enjoying it so much, but really feeling like, wow, I'm only really able to affect my 25 kids in my classroom. Like, I love making a difference. I love uh, seeing kids, that light bulb turn off in their head, seeing them learn, seeing them learn new things about themselves, and seeing them gain confidence in themselves when they don't feel that they could do something well, and then they can.
Mm-hmm.
And then saying, wow, it's only 25 kids a year. Like, I really wish I could help more. So um, I went into administration with the hopes of, becoming a principal at the time, or assistant principal, and really being able to make decisions that affect larger groups of students. And I did so. So I became an assistant principal. Did a lot of the supervision things, some curriculum things. For 2.5 years, I was an assistant principal in the same school where I taught. And then halfway through my third year, I got a call to finish the year as a principal in one of our other buildings. And then I stayed there for 10 years. And I was a principal for 10 years, and just really enjoyed that school. And it was a little bit of a smaller school than what I was used to. So it was nice. It was a little bit more of an intimate setting. And I was able to really get to know the students, the staff, and that part of the community a little bit more. And then from there, as principal, I started to do things with curriculum as a whole in our building and in the district, and just kind of became to enjoy that, and really think, okay, well, now I'm servicing 500 kids in a school. What else can I do to help more kids? So now, being the curriculum director, we have 2,700 students in our district,
Hmm.
pre-K through eighth grade, and I'm able to make sure they have all of the books, the tools, the technology that they need, to learn and to thrive, for both our teachers and our students. On top of that, I'm responsible for the professional development for our staff. So really being able to cater and differentiate that to our staff, much like they differentiate their instruction to our students,
Hmm.
and model, everything that I'm trying to preach that I would like to see in the classroom. I've got a great staff, great administrative support, just all around great community and great district to be in. When I was growing up, there were there were quite a few things that shaped me. I didn't have a lot of big struggles per se. Like I didn't have any learning disabilities, or I didn't have OCD. I really wasn't bullied. I was the youngest of two other siblings. I was the youngest in the family. I had an older brother and older sister. So I was used to being picked on at home. So when it got to school, I didn't really have those issues. But being the youngest in the family, and seeing like typical families do, fighting, brothers and sisters fighting, or parents fighting with my siblings. I always remember, like, whenever there was fighting or arguments going on in the house, just that feeling of despair, that feeling of,
Mm.
I don't like this. It made me feel uncomfortable. So I was always the one to try to patch things up. And I always felt that kind of shaped me to try to fix and resolve situations. When I saw conflict, I want to get in the middle of it to kind of bring you two back together. I don't want the conflict to continue. It makes me uncomfortable. I want everyone to be happy, right?
Yeah.
So being the youngest, I think it kind of shaped me that way. So when I was attending school, a pivotal moment, I would say, that really helped, I think, helped me identify who I was a situation where I saw other students being bullied,
Mm.
and then kind of what I did about it, and what I could do about it. I was never the one to stand up and like fight someone that was being bullied, but I always felt that I didn't like how they felt. So I
Mm.
would try to get them out of the situation, or try to counsel them and make them feel better. One particular situation falls when I was in seventh grade, and I'll never forget this because to this day I still see this gentleman, because he has kids that are my kids' age that go to the same school, and they're in the same class. So it's kind of funny the way it worked out. And I don't talk to this individual anymore, but I see him, and it makes me think of just this situation where he came to school from Cleveland, to Lansing, Illinois, as a seventh grader, and immediately was getting bullied and picked on, and in the very sense of the word, where it was pervasive, it was nonstop, it was every day, multiple times a day, specific students picking on him, and I remember seeing how he felt. And I
Yeah.
knew the guys that were picking on him. They didn't pick on me, but I wasn't really friends with them, but I wasn't enemies either. I was just kind of in that middle group. You kind of got, as you're growing up, the group in school that's, these are the kids that are bullying, these are the kids that are being bullied, and then you got everyone else kind of in the middle that's either leaning to one side or the other, or just not
Mm.
around for it. So I was kind of always leaning towards the kids that were being bullied, and not really fighting for them, but really trying to help and counsel and make them feel better. And I remember walking home, with this seventh grade, who was my same age as me at the time, and just counseling him and talking to him and telling him it's going to be okay. Those kids are jerks. You don't need to listen to them. And and that, to me, I think, really helped define me moving forward. I didn't. I always wanted to stick up for people, or to help them out. Never wanted anyone to feel less than,
Mm.
or anything like that. So now you fast forward, and you put me in the classroom as a teacher, and obviously I had no tolerance for things like that in the classroom, and really looked to, well, what can I do to talk with kids, when I see these situations going on? Because one thing I never believed in was when teachers said, well, you just got to stay away from each other. He's picking on you, just stay away from him. Well,
Mm.
you can't stay away from someone when you're in a 400 square foot room with them for
Yeah.
6 hours a day. You're going to
Right.
walk by the pencil sharpener. You need to try to resolve the issue. And sometimes that's with consequences with the other student. Um, but really, in the last, I'd say, 10 years, we've come a long way, I think, as an educational community, and talking about restorative practices and things that we could do, between the victim and the offender, um, to help counsel those situations. So one of the things I kind of wanted to discuss was, what we do as a district. I think that works. We do a couple things here, and I've done a couple things personally that I'll discuss as well, to help build those relationships when those things are happening. There's several different ways conflicts happen. There's being bullied. There's also just flat out conflicts where kids get into it with each other, and there's arguments. And more times than not, that's what it is. It's kids having disagreements. It's not necessarily bullying where it's happening every day by the same person multiple times. It's severe and pervasive. you know um, it's more of arguments with kids, and That's kind of when I got to the point of them, teachers always saying, or principals, well, you guys just got to stay away from each other. You're like oil and water, you don't mix.
Mm,
Well, you're going to find that with people throughout your life. And if you can't figure out a way to resolve it, then your life's just going to be full of turmoil and conflict.
right.
So I really try to give kids the tools to understand that, you can fix things and patch things up when you have conflict with someone. So what I like about restorative practices, there's I don't know if you're familiar with, there's questions for restorative practices. There's always questions that you ask the offender, and there's questions that you ask the person that was affected by it.
Could you share some
And
of those with us for our listeners?
yeah, and they're standard 5. So I'll actually, I've got all sorts of things. I got cards that we use that we give our staff for them. They have the questions on both sides. I got
Awesome.
restorative practice pamphlets that we do with our staff.
Oh,
So
wow.
and what's funny is I got these cards with the questions for the offender and for the one that was harmed.
Oh, wow.
Um, for
Restorative
the victim,
questions. Yeah.
that I got about from our district maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and then I just bought this nice like laminated pamphlet from the ASCD, and it has the same exact questions. And this is 10 years later, so these questions haven't changed.
No,
So
this is from the ASCD. Is that where our listeners could have said, where did Dr. Kostopoulos get
yeah,
this? You can go
yeah,
to
there's
A,
ASCD. You can see there.
and they
It's
can
an
send that out to them.
administrator kind of catalog, that you could order things from. So I use this for PD for our staff, and I ordered all of our staff actually this template. So here's the questions. The 5 questions for the offender. So the person that
It's doing the
maybe
bullying.
that was doing the bullying or started the fight or whatever it was.
Right.
Well, first of all, what happened? Number 2, what were you thinking about at the time? 3, what have you thought about since?
Mm,
4, who's been affected by what you've done and in what ways? And then the last question, what do you think you might need to do to make things right?
love it.
And I always feel it's very important to first have those questions in private with that student,
Mhm.
because you want to make sure that they're willing to speak to them, and sometimes it takes a little bit more discussion and guiding for them to get to that point where they understand they need to kind of say this to that person. But then you ask these questions to them in front of the person that was affected, the victim, and then questions for the victim. And it's very important that the offender's in the room when you're asking the victim these questions, because a lot of times the offenders, don't really put themselves into the shoes, of the victim. They don't have empathy, and that's a big part of the problem with all of this. I feel
Right.
is that word empathy, and I always talked about that with kids when I was counseling them as a principal, whether it was fighting or arguments, or he bumped into me in the hallway, he took my bag of chips, whatever it might have been.
Right.
So the questions for the victim, there's 4 of them. And it's, what did you think when you realized what had happened? A lot of times kids might say, well, I was surprised, or I was sad, or it made me think of something that happened to me at home earlier in the day, and it just really made me mad. And the offender might be like, oh, I didn't know, your sister hit you before you left for school. Right. Yeah. And I was already mad,
Yeah.
and then this happened. Right. So it gives them a little bit of perspective, right, of the other person's
Building some empathy.
Mhm. What effect has this incident had on you and others? They might say, it made my parents upset that I had to go home and say I got picked on, or something happened. And again, the offender can kind of hear from the victim's perspective what's going on without the blame part of
Right.
it. Because a
Right.
lot of times it's like, well, what did you do? And why did you do that? And, look what this made you, how him feel. And need to let the kids talk as much as possible. Question 3, what has been the hardest thing for you?
Mm,
So since, and it might be, well, I have trouble trusting him now, because every time he comes by my desk, I feel like I got to cover my food so he doesn't take my snacks or
right.
whatever it might be.
Right. Right. Right.
Look at what you're doing here. Like, should he have to feel that way, or she have to
Right.
feel that way? Because so it really helps generate some discussion. And then 4, what do you think needs to happen to make things right? And a lot of times this is a huge question, because the kid
Yeah.
might say, I just want an apology, or I just don't want that to happen again. Like, I don't even want an apology. I really just want to move on. And then it lets both parties lay that bag of bricks down and move on, from that. Because what I found in the conflict resolution and things that I've done with kids is that whenever they left my office, I wanted to make sure that whatever was going on, that we had laid it down and we had put it to rest and put it to bed and moved on with our lives. Because we're going back to class together. You're going to go back. Kids are going to ask you, wow, he pushed you. what happened? And you need to be able to say, hey, we're done with it. It's over. Like, we're not, I used to tell the kids too, hey, if you go back to class and some kids are asking you about it, you just tell me, because I'll call those kids in my office and tell them to leave it alone.
Right.
And then
It's been
don't tell
resolved.
me. It's
Yeah.
we resolved it. It was between us. It doesn't need, a lot of times that's what happens. Fires get reignited because other people are throwing gasoline on it from the outside
Right. Right.
and reigniting it. And I always tell the kids, like, when you go back, other kids, they might want to see you put on a show. They want to get their popcorn and they want to watch you go at it, because it's a show for them. I said, don't give them that show,
Right. Right.
So that was the main focus, was really having the kids leave and having those questions. Like, and I've had it before where I just tried to talk about it with kids, and then I like really made it a point sometimes to just straight up ask these questions word for word. And when I did this, always ended better.
Now, if
I
it
was like, Dave, stick to the script. Like, don't try to go off script. Just ask these questions. Make sure you ask them, right? So to me, that's huge. And we preach that with our administrators and our staff, and we still do, and especially this year, once I got these things. It was designed, this was Restorative Practices, which kind of came out a lot, like I said, about 10 years ago, somewhere around there. And that's where you get into things like peace circles and classroom discussions, and really everyone identifying with how they feel and things like that. So other things for restorative practices that you might hear about are things like peace circles, right? Or classroom time, peace building. And a good example that happened in my building every day was one of my kindergarten teachers after lunch every day did family circle time. That's what they called it. And the kids would sit in a circle and they would just talk about how they're feeling, and if there's something that's bugging them. And other teachers, especially in older grades, they do it first thing in the morning. So that way, if a student came in and they're really upset because something happened at home, like they took the wrong lunch, and they got their sister's lunch, and they don't like it, and so now their whole day is ruined, right?
Right.
And their mom's at work, and there's nothing. So now they have to have hot lunch or eat their sister's lunch, and they're really upset. And if you just give them a chance to vent that to the group,
Yeah.
it just feels better. Again, it lets them set that bag of bricks down and get it out to everybody. And now hey, you're a little bit on edge, and then you don't need, if they're looking a little frustrated, that why, right? And it's not you, it's something that they're dealing with, and maybe you can help them. And maybe that makes another kid say, hey, you can have my bag of chips. I don't really want them. Seems like you really need them today. And now, some kindness starts happening. So restorative practices are really great. And if you look them up, there's a ton of things. ASCD, again, has this awesome pamphlet that covers all sorts of restorative practices, including those questions that I read. So, which I think are probably the biggest, of that. So
That was amazing, Dr. Kostopoulos. I mean,
this card 10 years ago, and I got this year, and the questions are word for word the same. So
perfect.
So I think those were the only ones out there.
And then do you ever give, if someone's listening, do you give the bully the card, and maybe, or is it
No, I'll ask the questions.
You ask questions. Hey, like,
you can write them down and make like a worksheet out of it and have kids sit down and reflect on it on their own. Like, if they're old enough, like first graders, I wouldn't give them a form to fill out. It would just have to be discussion. But fifth graders, or older students, you see a lot of these questions on like worksheets for reflection worksheets.
Yeah.
And then you use those reflection worksheets to guide the discussion between the two. So you at least got something on paper, because a lot of times kids need help with these questions because they don't know how to be self-reflective yet.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we have to do and teach them to be. Like, I'll never assume that a kid's going to know how to answer that question. So you might have to guide them through it, and help get them to a place where, again, you could get those students to a place where they can be friends again, or it could get resolved.
What in your experience is there I know it's hard to quantify or measure that, but is it usually a pretty successful outcome where maybe they're not best friends, but at least where they both feel comfortable and they both feel safe and they both feel
in the moment? I swear, I'd say it's 99% effective in the moment.
Wow.
You can't like meaning when they left my office, we were good.
That's
right.
Incredible. Yeah.
Now to say what happens after that, whether they're on Instagram, messages are going back and forth, or something happens a couple of weeks later, I might find those two students back in my office, kind of going through this again.
Yeah.
But in the moment, like, it was dead on with resolving that conflict with kindergarten through 5th grade, right? I didn't do this with middle school students, but I know that we do in our middle school. And another thing I would use, and I talked to you about this real quick, was magic,
Yeah, I
to
remember.
do that. So I brought a quick example, if you don't mind. It's a very simple
Please,
example.
are you
So
kidding?
so again, like my thing with kids was I wanted them to leave my office in a good place.
Hmm.
And what I found with in seeing and dealing with all sorts of conflicts, whether it was students fighting or, they pulled my chair out from behind me in class,
Hmm.
went in my locker, or whatever it may be,
Ooh.
they would be very hot coming in.
Yeah.
And my goal was to first, if you're going to be able to have these types of questions, like you need to first squash the anger, and you need to get them to a place where they're on the same page, they're not against each other. So what I would try to do with magic would really just try to give both of them another situation, because I needed to somehow remove what just happened. I need to get that off their mind. I need
Right.
to get to a place where they either are agree or they're in the same place. And a lot of times that would be magic, because they would both be wondering, how do you do that? And
Right.
now I got you. Now I got you both thinking the same thing. I
Yeah.
got you in agreement on something. You both agree that you don't know how this happened.
Right.
You can agree on something, right? And
Yeah.
now I've replaced the most recent moment, which was tragic, which was the fight, with a different moment. Now we have a new moment that we've had together,
A
and we've
commonality.
already filed that one back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this is a very simple tool. I don't know if you've seen these
No.
before. You get them in simple magic kits. It's a very simple tool. So I would give the kid, I'd hold this up and say, hey guys, you see what this is? And I'd give one of the kids the ball. I'd say, here, hold this in your hand. So the kid would hold it in their hand. I'd be like, okay, put it in the fist.
Got it.
Put it in the fist. They'd hold it down,
Uh-huh.
and I'd take my hand and I put it on theirs, and I go, okay, think something positive about this student. Okay, well, what it's still saying, oh, I think I like your shoes. You have nice shoes, or you're good at math. Okay, great. And I pull my hand away. I'm like, that's a positive comment. So they'd be holding the ball in their hand, and I'd sit there and I'd have this right here, and I'd go, okay, let's count. So that was a positive piece of energy that you just put in there. And I said, look, there's nothing in. We took out the positive ball.
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, and I'll go, look,
No
there's the
way.
ball. And I'll cover it up, and they'll go, well, and they'll have it in their hand. They'll be like, whoa. And both the kids will look at each other, and what happened? And I'll be like, right, but look, it's gone again. Right? So now say something positive again about him. And you'd be like, well, he could jump real high. Boom. Look, you just multiplied positive, and one positive thing spurs more positive things. And that's what we want to do. I said, but as you can see, it's gone, and they don't last forever. So you always got to keep being positive. So we would just kind of have this story and talk, and then I'd give it to the other kid, and we do that. And what I'm really doing is having them say positive things about each other. So now we have positive connections. We just got into a fight. Now we're saying positive things. So we're rebuilding the relationship.
Yeah.
So and really all it is
I love it.
it's just an extra little piece that sits in
Oh,
there.
no
And it's
way.
just about, simple grab. I grab it, it's gone. It's really underneath,
I love it. That's
but
so
it's
cool.
it comes in every, like, if you buy a little magic box kit for kids online, this is like the main thing that comes in magic kits. As you can see, my dog got to it a little bit because I brought it home. My
I
kids were
love
playing with
that.
it. But this is a very simple tool I used all the time. I used other ones. I had about 4 or 5 tricks that I would use to create wonder and awe, and leave them guessing. And I'd be like, all right, you guys, you know what? Sometimes they were so hot, I would just do the trick in front of them and be like, okay, I'm gonna walk away for a minute. I want you two to talk about how you think I did that. And they'd sit there and they'd be like, well, I think you did. And now they're collaborating. They
Yeah.
were just fighting a minute ago. So
Yeah.
I've really just turned the situation around. Now we can begin rebuilding, because if they're angry at each other, you aren't rebuilding anything. You need to create a new situation, because
it's brilliant. No, go ahead. Sorry.
so yeah, no, so that's a little tool that I would use. And I saw a magician come to our school, and he did some stuff, and that's kind of, when I was like, man, how could I use this? So then I bought his kit. This was one of the things in there, and there were some other card tricks and things that I used, because obviously if the kids come in again, I'm not going to do the same one.
Right.
I need to have a couple tricks here. And so yeah, so that was also another thing that I used personally. It's nothing that we use as a district, but it's totally something that, like, I feel like I'd love to take on the road one day.
I love it. You know, it's amazing. It's brilliant because you're creating an association, a healthy association with saying something kind and positive, right? Because then the ball's there, the healthy energy. And then if they say something negative, the ball disappears.
Yeah, I did do the negative one too. Like, yeah, say something bad. Like you say
Brilliant.
stupid, look, it's gone. Like it
Brilliant.
disappeared, you know? So,
That's
so
brilliant.
yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So that was, I love doing that. I mean, I would sometimes be like, hey, I really want to do this with kids because it made me feel good solving the conflict.
Yeah.
Again, going back to as a kid, being the youngest sibling, like I
Yeah.
hated conflict. So like I was always trying to just resolve things, and you can't just say stay apart from each other.
Right.
And again, they leave fine, and there'd be a lot of relationships that were awesome the rest of the year
Yeah.
because of it, you know. But you know, again, sometimes kids have conflict again, and we come back in and we talk about it again.
Yeah.
But we always left with, how'd you do that? I'm like, well, you two figure it out.
Yeah.
Tell me when you guys come up with an answer.
Yeah. I
Again, it
love it.
gives me something to talk about, something to
Love
have.
that.
So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Dr. Kostopoulos. I think in addition to a teacher and a principal and a director of curriculum and assessment, I think you have, and magician, and I
yeah,
think you have some neuroscientist in you too, because,
yeah,
or a
right.
neuropsychologist, because that trick was just, that's amazing because it's um, so much more than the trick. It really has a profound meaning attached to it. So that's really brilliant. Uh,
Yeah,
and I'm going to put a link into that too. If anyone's like, you know what, I got to do that too. I want to do what Dr. Kostopoulos is doing. So
yeah,
that's, oh,
absolutely.
that's awesome. You know, have you ever been to the Magic Castle? This is totally off topic, but there's a Magic Castle. If you're ever in California, in Los Angeles, as a magician, you would love it. It's right down the street from where I live, and they have some of the most amazing magicians on the planet that you just go room to room and they're doing various,
Wow.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
I love it because I'll take any trick, and the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, how can I use this with kids? How
Yeah.
can I use this with conflict resolution? Because
Yeah.
there's always a way to do it. Yeah, and it just gives that mystery to it, and it really lets them know that, you know, feelings and emotions are magical, and they can really change things in a profound way. Words are very important, and that's where this whole restorative practices and, you know, conflict resolution, you know, it's all about words and how we use them and how we learn to use them. And
Yeah.
that's a big thing we got to teach our kids, because there's a lot of conflict in our world, and you know, from politics to preschool, and
Yeah.
you know, simple things such as conflict resolution, restorative practices, discussion is what's needed. So the more we build these up with kids, maybe the better our world will be, right?
Oh, you know, really, you're amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Kostopoulos, for sharing your time, your wisdom, your magic, and just truly, I know our viewers are going to love this. I loved it. I learned a lot from this, and I know other superintendents and directors of curriculum will, and assistant superintendents, maybe some parents, maybe there's some students watching this that are thinking, yeah, that restorative practice with those 5 questions for each person, that would be really helpful. So yeah, this was incredible. Thank you so much for, oh, and you know, last question, if anything else you want to share or final thoughts.
Oh, you know, yeah, and I was just, my one of my previous superintendents had said this, and it's just always follow your moral compass, right? So, you know, our motto for our district is, we can't see it, as putting the children first. So every decision we make, you know, especially as an administrator, you know, sometimes you got a lot of people you got to make happy. You got teachers, you got parents, you got board members. You know, at the end of the day, there's really only one group that you need to make happy and that you do what you do for, and
Yeah.
that's students. So our motto is PTCF, putting the children first. And every decision I make, whenever, you know, I get conflicted about it, I really just kind of go back to that core question. Okay, which one of these decisions or answers to this decision is going to put the children first? What's in their best interest? Because at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, and that's the right answer to, that's the right decision to go with.
Yeah, and it shows. That's just beaming from your being. And thank you again so much for sharing. There was a lot in here. I'm going to be floating a lot of subtitles on the bottom under this one, so thank you again, Dr.
Wonderful.
Kostopoulos.
No worries. Nice seeing you again. And once again, just a plug for what you do. It was wonderful for our students and our kids. So I look forward to, you know, another adventure with you with assemblies with our kids, you know, learning to be self-reflective and really model, you know, some of these peace circles, which are restorative practices. So I don't know if you know that or not, but what you modeled in your assembly for our students was at the crux of restorative practices. And it's in here. I mean, it's circle talks, peace circles, talking about your feelings. And that was one giant district-wide 1,300 kid peace circle that we did there. And I mean, we could have had Guinness World Book of Records there because they had to be the largest one ever.
That was awesome. That was so fun. I loved it. No,
Yeah. So
thank
looking
you.
forward to it again.
Likewise.
Yeah, no problem.